there have been a lot of strongmen and authoritarians who have created their own paramilitaries who are loyal to them over the country or the Constitution or democracy in general, and those never situations never turn out well.
Thank you for tuning in to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm your guest host, Misty Winston. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. It's Friday. It's a weekend. I think after I'm done here, I don't know about you guys, but I think I'm going to like log off of social media for the weekend and decompress a little bit. I think I need it. This week's been brutal. But this story is insane. Not surprising, but insane. So this is from Dropsite, who I'm not a huge fan of. They're pretty kind of, I think, I need to do some research on them. But President Trump has signed an executive order directing War Secretary, which I kind of love that they changed that to the Department of War. It's much more honest. War Secretary Pete Hegseth to create a standing National Guard. You ready for this? Quick reaction force. A domestic military unit trained, resourced, and ready for rapid nationwide deployment to support law enforcement in, quote, quelling civil disturbances. That is a terrifying sentence. Under the order, Hegseth must designate Guard members in every state, ensure that they are trained and equipped, and make them available for mobilization at the president's direction. So this is basically like his own little private army to deal with civil disturbances, civil unrest, protesters, basically. And we've seen the way that Trump treats protesters. It's not good. So this is not good stuff. Investigative reported Radley Balko warned on Democracy Now! That Trump has long sought a loyal paramilitary force to crush dissent, calling the order a dangerous erosion of the line between the military and civilian policing. If courts block the plan, Balko cautioned, Trump could expand ICE and Border Patrol into a de facto domestic army, agencies already flush with new congressional funding and less constrained by constitutional limits. And this is why we don't support ICE, or I don't support ICE. Maybe you do. I do not support ICE and Border Patrol because I am very, very, very acutely aware of the fact that they can easily be turned and used against American citizens. They're already well funded. They're using Israeli spy technology. They're using facial recognition technology. They've got all the bells and whistles, and they can very easily be flipped and turned into a domestic operation. And that's not something I'm interested in any way, shape, or form. So I do have this segment from Democracy Now! Where Radley Balko is talking about this. I'm going to play this for you guys so you can hear him discussing it, and then we'll come back and talk about it together.
Executive order Trump directing Pete Hegseth to, quote, ensure the availability of a standing National Guard quick reaction force that shall be resource trained and available for rapid nationwide deployment.
Yeah, so Trump has always wanted his own muscle, right? He's always expressed envy for dictators and authoritarians overseas who have forces that they can deploy to do their own sort of personal bidding, whether it's putting down protests or going after political opponents. And during his first term, if you'll remember, Trump regularly posted on social media about the bikers, soldiers, and cops who were ready to rally to his cause and hurt his opponents. It's hard to remove that context from this executive order. Trump wants these rapid deployment units created within the National Guard that he can deploy. I think the word nationwide is important, right? This isn't to deploy overseas. This is a military force to be deployed domestically. We've long had a norm or an ethos in this country of keeping the military separate from domestic law enforcement. Trump is slowly eating away at that and creating a new norm where it's just sort of accepted that this is going to be part of our country now. We're going to have troops in the streets. But this is particularly problematic, worrisome, because Pete Hegseth has no law enforcement experience, no law enforcement background, and asking him to oversee this project, to oversee the staffing, the training, and the general oversight. And presumably he would be coming up with the rules of engagement for these forces. Hegseth not only has no law enforcement background, but he defends war criminals. He doesn't believe war crimes are real or should be prosecuted. This is a person who wrote in his book that the military should be enlisted in a holy war. And this is a guy who his favorite word is lethality, right? So he's going to be the person overseeing this. I think it is a really dangerous development. I mean, over the course of recent modern history in the modern world, there have been a lot of strongmen and authoritarians who have created their own paramilitaries who are loyal to them over the country or the Constitution or democracy in general, and those situations never turn out well.
No, I would say that's a safe thing to say. Having a paramilitary force in the streets of this country seems like a really bad idea, guys. And as a activist, as somebody who has been to many protests, as somebody who has been brutalized by cops at protests, I am not interested at all in having the National Guard rolling into protests. And we all know that this isn't going to be used for completely out of control situations and where there needs to be, this is going to be used for any and all dissent. Anybody that protests against Trump, he's going to call in his little paramilitary group to kick your ass. And that is not okay by any stretch of the imagination. That's an insane thing that we are looking at here. But that's exactly what he is seeking to develop here. Oh, that's just the video there. So I wanted to bring the paragraphs from this executive order where he's talking about this, so you can see for yourself exactly what he says in the wording. This is from the White House website. So, and this is a longer thing. I just brought the parts that have to do with this task force, which again, the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force. The naming of things by Trump is comical. The DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force established an executive order 14252 of March 27th, 2025, making the District of Columbia safe and beautiful, shall establish an online portal for Americans with law enforcement or other relevant backgrounds and experience to apply to join federal law enforcement entities to support the policy goals described in Executive Order 14333. Each law enforcement agency that is a member of the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force, as well as other relevant components of the Department of Justice, as the Attorney General determines, shall further, subject to the availability of appropriations and applicable law, immediately create and begin training, manning, hiring, and equipping a specialized unit that is dedicated to ensuring public safety and order in the nation's capital that can be deployed whenever the circumstances necessitate, and that could be deployed subject to applicable law in other cities where public safety and order has been lost. The Secretary of Defense shall, subject to the availability of appropriations and applicable law, immediately create and begin training, manning, hiring, and equipping a specialized unit within the District of Columbia National Guard, subject to activation under Title 32 of the United States Code, that is dedicated to ensuring public safety and order in the nation's capital, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law. The Attorney General, the Secretary of the Interior, and the Secretary of Homeland Security, in coordination with the Secretary of Defense, shall each deputize the members of this unit to enforce federal law. The Secretary of Defense shall immediately begin ensuring that each state's Army National Guard and Air National Guard are resourced, trained, organized, and available to assist federal, state, and local law enforcement in quelling civil disturbances and ensuring the public safety and order whenever the circumstances necessitate, as appropriate under law, in coordination with the respective I really cannot talk today, guys. Adjutants General, the Secretary of Defense shall designate an appropriate number of each state's trained National Guard members to be reasonably available for rapid mobilization for such purposes. In addition, the Secretary of Defense shall ensure the availability of a standing National Guard quick reaction force that shall be resource trained and available for rapid nationwide deployment. So this is basically just Donald Trump's special little military, special little gang that he can deploy anywhere that he wants to, anywhere that he sees fit, if anybody happens to get a little too rowdy in protesting against something. And again, we've seen the way that Donald Trump, and this is not specific to Donald Trump, we see the way that this country treats protesters. We can look at Standing Rock, for example, under President Obama. They like to, or Occupy. I was at Occupy in Columbus, Ohio, and I didn't get brutalized that time, but I saw other people getting brutalized. This is a very common thing. This country, the people in power, do not like dissent at all. And I think honestly that the events of January 6th were really just set up to discourage people from protesting, to scare people away from protesting, and other events too. But I think that's the most recent example. But the idea that he is now attempting to set up this like paramilitary group that is just like rapid response anywhere in the country to come beat people up who are protesting is a ridiculous concept. Especially given the fact that we have a right to or we're supposed to have a right to redress our government and protest in this country. We don't really. So this is from ABC News. Trump's plan to create guard units to quell civil unrest alarms experts. A lot of people are freaking out about this, rightfully so. It's not a good idea. This is bad. So President Donald Trump on Monday ordered the Pentagon to create National Guard units in Washington, D.C. and across the country that would be designated to tamp down civil protests and ensure public safety, a job that historically and legally has belonged to civilian law enforcement. Critics called Trump's desire to build a kind of rapid reaction force for civil unrest alarming, insisting his order pushes legal boundaries for the National Guard, an auxiliary force whose mission is to help fight foreign enemies abroad or aid Americans in times of extraordinary crisis like hurricanes and floods. So that's generally what they're used for. When there's a tornado, we send in the National Guard. They help with cleanup. They help with, rescues, all of that stuff. That's typically what they're used for. He is wanting to change that whole game plan. In an executive order signed Monday, Trump called on Defense Secretary, which is now War Secretary, Pete Hegseth, to designate Army and Air National Guard members in each state who could rapidly deploy to help federal, state, and local law enforcement, quote, in quelling civil disturbances and ensuring the public safety and order whenever the circumstances necessitate as appropriate under the law, end quote. As appropriate under the law is doing a lot of work in that sentence. We all know that there is no law. Like the law doesn't apply to them, and he'll use it however he wants. The order also called on Hegseth to begin immediately training and equipping a quote unquote specialized unit within the DC National Guard, quote, that is dedicated to ensuring public safety and order in the nation's capital. The order says members of the unit would be deputized to enforce federal law. When asked for comment, the Pentagon said it's reviewing the order and its requirements. Retired Major General Randy Manner, a former acting vice chief of the National Guard Bureau and vocal opponent of Trump's reliance on Guard troops to aid law enforcement, said Trump's orders were unnecessary and 100% political. There's no question about it. Quote, the administration is trying to desensitize the American people to get used to American armed soldiers in combat vehicles patrolling the streets of America. Yes. Trump wants Guard units, quote, whose purpose is to, quite frankly, dominate and police the American people. And that is extremely disturbing. The police state, y'all, we have been getting led in this direction for a very long time. The police state, the surveillance state, the technocracy, all of that stuff has been, they're slow walking it. They're smart. They're not going to do it overnight, but this is something that they have been building to over the course of several presidencies, several presidents. And it's really starting to culminate now. And it's crazy that it's gotten this far. It's unfortunate that it's gotten this far, but it has gotten this far. And we're starting to see the way that the surveillance state and the police state is being facilitated now. And it's wild to me that people, not only are people kind of apathetic about it, but a lot of people are like in support. And what's wild is it's people who a couple years ago were vehemently against this stuff. Like the MAGA people, if you would have talked to even in between Trump 1 and Trump 2, they were against this stuff fully and completely. They have been against the surveillance state. That's one of the things that I've been able to work with MAGA on is being against the surveillance state, being against the police state, being against, all of that stuff. But it's crazy to me how effective they are in getting people to support things against their own interests. It's wild how effective that is. And here we have it. And now MAGA, who were so strong in their beliefs against this stuff, and now they fully and 100% support it. And it's crazy. They're cheering it on. And it's wild. Like I've seen people on Twitter posting, I voted for this. You did? Because like 5 years ago, you were against this stuff. And now suddenly it's a thing that you voted for. It's just crazy to me. So retired Major General Linda Singh, who led thousands of troops in Baltimore, Maryland during the 2015 riots after the death of Freddie Gray, said the National Guard already has the ability to respond to civil unrest in the times of crisis, but using activated military troops to conduct law enforcement for the long term could have major consequences, including harming the well-being of Guard personnel if their own communities reject their mission. Yeah, this is setting up a massive conflict between the people and the National Guard. I don't think people are going to like them rolling into their neighborhoods in this manner at all. So, quote, what happens if there's an escalation and civilians are killed or guardsmen are killed? I don't think we have an answer for that, said Singh, a former adjutant. Am I saying that right? I feel like that's a weird word that I'm not pronouncing properly. I don't know. For the Maryland Army National Guard. Without a plan to return policing power to local civilian authorities, quote, I think we are setting precedents we can't come back from. And that's the big thing. Once these things happen, there's really, we've the Patriot Act, like once these things happen, we don't go back from it. Once you lose rights, you don't get them back. So that's why I think that's really the kicker here is that once the precedent is set, it's really difficult to then effectively fight back the way you came. Like it's so bad. So stopping it would be the ideal situation. So Trump's latest executive order comes after the president deployed some 2,200 National Guard troops to Washington, D.C., declaring crime was out of control, even as city officials insisted it was lower than it's been in decades. And I have friends that live in D.C., and they have said that it's crime has really not been as bad as it has been in the past. But that's, again, the way that they manufacture consent for this stuff. They fearmonger and they convince you that crime is out of control and we have to do something about it. We got to make America safe again. Let's send in the National Guard. And then once they do it in DC, that normalizes it. Once people become accustomed to seeing military personnel walking the streets of an American city, it becomes so much easier for them to continue to do it in subsequent cities. Since their deployment began, troops have patrolled mostly lower crime areas, including the National Mall and several metro rail stations. Armed with M17 pistols and some M4 rifles, the troops are not conducting arrests, officials said. Instead, officials say troops are calling in security incidents to local police. Guard members also could be seen posing with tourists and picking up trash around tourist spots. Administration officials have defended the move as enabling police to go into higher crime areas. Trump on Monday said he wants to replicate the deployment in other cities like Chicago. He's already threatened that. He said they should be saying, please come in. Trump told reporters of Democratic governors who object to the president's use of the Guard in their states. Under the law known as posse comitatus, the military is barred from acting as law enforcement on U.S. soil, but there are rare exceptions. As in the case of DC troops deployed for a federal mission, but kept under the command of governors under a law known as Title 32, are exempt from posse comitatus. The DC mobilization is reliant on 6 Republican governors who agreed to Trump's request to send troops from their states to help police in the city where the White House commands troops. Sending troops into states over the objections of the governor is more limited. In the case of California, Trump invoked a different law, Title 10, I guess, which allows a president to use Guard resources to protect federal property and federal personnel. The National Guard already has, quote unquote, quick reaction forces in every state that are able to respond quickly in times of crisis. I witnessed that when there was a tornado in Dayton, Ohio, which isn't that far from me. They were able to go in there and help out there. Actually, they got hit by 2 tornadoes within 48 hours. That was crazy. Manor said Trump appears to be calling for something different. Instead of the capability to respond to a crisis, Trump appears to want units that specialize in quelling civil unrest, much as other units might specialize in intelligence or armor. They're going to be there to police Americans, Manor said. The White House and Pentagon have not been able to provide a cost estimate on the National Guard deployment in DC. It's funny how there's never any hand-wringing or pearl clutching over how are we going to pay for that when it's stuff like this. When it's war or the police state or whatever, there's never any conversation about how are we going to pay for that. But if you want like health care, sorry, we can't do that. If it's for bombs, it's all cool. It's all good. You don't even have to ask the question. the check's already signed before the sentence is out of your mouth. So there you go. Trump is going to be creating, or at least attempting to create, his own little paramilitary group that will be ready for rapid response in the United States, in the streets of the United States of America, whenever he sees fit to police American citizens. So that's fun. Good times. Lots of fun. All the freedom, guys. Just look at all the freedom we've got here in the United States. It's really overwhelming. Can't handle all the freedom.
Come see me on tour in Appleton, Wisconsin, Rosemont, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, Louisville, Fort Wayne, Hermosa Beach, Sacramento, San Francisco. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.